Well, basically, I mean, I think the system is flawed. Remember the first time I actually felt out of place in my body, but I do remember in the sport, like with the other girls, we always just wanted to be small.
Here we are. We're live. I'm pretty excited. You are one of my favorite humans on the planet. And so I am excited to get you on the podcast. Oh man, you have quite an accolade list we can say now. So former gymnast, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Former gymnast UNH, right?
That's
Moved on to
correct.
CrossFit, competitive CrossFit Games athlete individually, and now on CrossFit Mayhem with Rich Froning and company. Won the games last year, right? Right.
Yes, last year.
And, everything else on the sun is not even close to how good of a person you are and how much I love hanging out with you from when we met a few years ago. So Tasia Percevecz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Talk about spur of the moment, right? This happened like 3 days ago. I was like, hey, you want to try a podcast? You're like, yeah, sure. Let's do a podcast.
Yeah, sure. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, no, right? So we were chatting beforehand, but what's new in your life, man? What's going on with the down south of Cookeville?
So not much new, just training really hard all the time. That's pretty much on the agenda right now. I mean, the games are like a little bit over a month out. So we're in the heat of it, just training pretty much all day. That's my focus, and eating right, sleeping right, trying to stay healthy, priority.
All in, man, right? So that's how it is, the life of a pro athlete, all in all the time.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah. Yeah, right. For half of it's right because you need to, like, you just know your body needs it. But also too is you want to make sure you look back and say, I did every single possible thing I could to have an outcome that I like.
Yeah, definitely leave no doubt. I think that's one thing that's cool. I was never really a volume athlete until I came to CrossFit Mayhem. And last year it was kind of hard for my body to adjust to the volume. Whereas this year it's definitely tough, but I feel more mentally and physically prepared for it. So I feel more prepared going to the games. Like we're a month out and I'm ready. I'm like, the games can be tomorrow. I'm like, okay, let's go. Whereas last year I was kind of like so freaked out. I'm like, okay, we can wait.
Oh, the unknown is terrible. You're spinning stories in your head about everything possible that could or could not happen. And like that's just as exhausting as doing an actual workout.
Yeah, you definitely learn to, like, when I start going down those rabbit holes, I just stop myself. I'm like, there's no point wasting energy on this right now. Like, let's just work out, stay in the moment as much as you can.
Yeah, isn't that crazy, right? I filmed a podcast last night with Sam Petrick, and we were talking about that. She was saying like how hard it was for her as a gymnast with skills and stuff, and even now in business. But like oftentimes the battles that are happening are not external; they're right between your ears, and that is like the hardest one. I can't even imagine what you guys go through at the games and like the stress of that when you're competing.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge factor. It's kind of funny because I look back on some of like last year's games and the stress I was under, like the sickening amount of pressure that I felt going into some things. And I'm like, I can do anything. Like looking at the games now, I'm like, I can't believe I went out into a workout. There was one last year where it was a handstand walk obstacle course, which I'm good at handstand walks, but it's also like you can't miss right now. Like there is no room for error. And on my team, you either had to do a double stair or double ramp, and the ramp's easier. But because of how our team was set up, I had to do a double stair. So I was just freaking out, like, oh my gosh, what if I'm not capable? Like if I miss once, if I miss twice, because even if you're good at it, you don't really know. And you really have to like arrest those thoughts and just get in the moment. And out on the floor, I didn't miss at all. But like all that time I wasted going into it, like I'm going to throw up before we even go out on the floor. And it was completely unnecessary. But
It's
you just
crazy.
get so wrapped up sometimes.
Oh yeah. The more that I work with, I guess just like my own kind of journey through working with higher level athletes and a lot of like pro or Olympians now, it's just absolutely mind boggling how much of the game is mental. And obviously like everybody's doing the work. Everybody's, for the most part is putting in the effort and stuff like that. But like the things that go on in terms of like keeping yourself calm, I think are just like, it's super impressive to see people who can do that well.
Yeah. And I think the more time you like go into situations, like can look back and be like, okay, that was not good. We got to think positive. And I mean, I practice positive self-talk. I pray. I do a lot of things to try and keep myself present before I go out anyways. But yeah, you can't let those things take control because they can really put you down a rabbit hole real quick. And like, I've had an adrenaline dump in competition before, not at the games this year, but that's real. Like, cause I was
Mhm.
so worked up in my first regionals, I had like a serious adrenaline dump and
What
my body just stopped functioning. What'd you
really?
say?
I'm not the term. What is that?
I mean, I don't know if it's like a scientific term. I could have made it up.
It
Um,
definitely probably is. It sounds smart.
it sounds smart, but pretty much in my first regionals, so you have done all the workouts before you go to regionals. So you know
Mm.
your times and like target times where you're at. And I went in like so worked up, so nervous that my heart rate and everything was so high. My adrenaline was so high that instead of like me using that to like catapult myself to do well, I went out wicked hot and just like imploded. Like my
Uh,
body, I remember being like physically like I'm not in my body because it wouldn't do what it should be doing, and
crazy.
just like full body fatigue. And I crashed and burned so hard, which was like a huge learning lesson. But like
Yeah.
minutes slower than my training times. Um,
Wow.
and I remember I'm like, it's real. I'm pretty sure it's a real thing. I don't know if I made
I
up the
know.
terminology,
Now,
but
now that I hear it, it definitely is. I've definitely read about it.
yeah. So I'm like, it's real in a sense of like your emotions can get you so worked up that it will affect you physically.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
have to
Absolutely.
keep that in check.
Yeah. There's two follow-up things that are to that. Have you ever heard of the story about like the Navy SEAL swim test? You ever heard of this before?
No.
So they have to essentially go in the water and put themselves under, and they have to no jump. They have to push off the wall and go all the way down, all the way back without popping up, just like free swim. And all those guys are like savagely fit. They could probably do it, but the fear of whatever could happen and like drowning, their heart rate's pumping off the top because you're watching guys in front of you go, and you're watching guys black out and get pulled up to the surface, and so their instructors are screaming at you, telling you how many people are. This again, I've heard this through Navy SEAL accounts and books, but they say that it's way more of a mental test because the people who can keep their heart rate calm and keep their like adrenaline calm can conserve oxygen, and they can conserve some of the like the flood of glucose and stuff under the water. So if you blow yourself up early and you get halfway down and you're so freaked out that you don't have any energy left, you black out and stuff. But then people who do it in a breeze are the ones that can stay calm. It's way more about what's happening in your head.
For sure. And that's something actually I've changed in the past is like I used to think like I need to get like pumped up to go
Mm,
do a workout. And it's actually not the case. Like obviously you need to warm up your body and get like your central nervous system firing and like ready to go. But
mhm.
before I go out, I'm just like trying to lower my heart rate before I get into the floor, whereas it's like a common misconception that you're like, oh, like I got to
Yeah.
get going. You know what I mean? To get ready to go. When actually like you're about to go into a workout, I'm trying to lower my heart rate because it's already like,
Yeah, and I've also noticed this again in working with some different levels of athletes and stuff. Is it's like the ones who can not only do that before, I think, have a tactical advantage, but also it's weird, man. It's the people who can maintain like a level of heart rate and like adrenaline during the event that's like kind of calm and not go super nuts. Those seem to be the ones that seem to do well. But the thing that I've noticed the most is the ones who have that ability to switch on and switch off, and really when they're out of an event or when they're after a practice, they're like complete recovery mode and they can really dial it back. They recover super quick between workouts. And I honestly think that those people have a huge advantage in like the total stress response and the ability to recover from that, because again, they're connected and they know how to calm themselves down before, during, and after a workout.
Totally. And that's something I've actually learned a lot from Rich because if you know Rich or you've watched him, he's super methodical. Like he's never going out guns blazing. He's always coming up from behind passing you. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I'm kind of like the opposite athlete. When I came here last year, they make fun of me all the time because I just go out hard because I'm more of like a sprinter and not really like long distance. And I would just die. And now it's like I've kind of slowed myself down. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be smart in the beginning and then try and pick it up. So it's definitely learned from him, which has
Mm.
been really cool.
Yeah, there's definitely two aspects of, if I could summarize a lot of high level athletes that we know, it's one is just the ability to tolerate a lot of discomfort and pain, right? And the second piece of that is, I guess, productive suffering. I don't want to say like hurt yourself, but the
Right.
second piece of that is the people who can somehow stay calm in the storm, man. It's training. It really is just mental training and like physical training and learning to kind of hang out and be there. But the people who can like get to a really crappy place and then just like really keep themselves calm there, man, the things that they do are mind blowing.
Yeah. And it's been eye opening too, which is funny. Like hearing you say it like that makes me think of swimming because
Hmm.
I started swimming last year, like for the first time. And I was so worked up a lot of times going in, scared of not necessarily drowning, but just like, I don't know, not being able to complete it. that
Yeah.
when you're worked up in swimming, swimming's like the opposite, just like you're saying, just like most sports. You have to be relaxed. And when waves are
Mm.
crashing in the face, and if you swallow water, if you get worked up, you're not going to make it. You know what I mean? Like you actually have to just like go with the waves. And we've been swimming, I'm much better now because we've been swimming a lot, but we swim out on a lake and it's like choppy often. So it's kind of teaching you, you know, when you want to get worked up and tight, it's going to like ruin it. Whereas
Yeah.
if you have to relax, you'll do much better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tricky because it's something that's like, it's so hard for you to not hit the panic button, right? Like a lot of these things, and I've studied a lot of this stuff. It's like evolutionary, man. It's like primal. Like we were thinking back to like negative thoughts. Like you don't want to think crappy things about yourself and have these horrible negative thoughts, but they just pop out of nowhere. And you're like, whoa, what am I saying to myself? And then all of a sudden you're in the water, you get blasted with a wave and you're like, okay, I'm dying. Panic, 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 right? It's like, it's not something you voluntarily do, but it comes up because it's so hardwired into who we are. But
Yeah. Isn't that funny that, you know, a lot of those thoughts, they're initially always negative. And the thing is, whoever, even the top of the sphere, they're having negative thoughts that they're fighting off. You know, it's
mhm,
just innate in
mhm,
everyone. And then
yep.
we have to practice that positive self-talk to like bring ourselves out of it. It's kind of just like a funny conundrum that we're always like, you were not like, oh, I get pummeled with the wave. I'm like, I can do this. Let's
Yeah.
go. You know, I'm like, I'm going to die. And then I'm like, no, you can do it.
Not wearing rose colored glasses. It's a reality, but it's accepting it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And it was interesting to hear too. I guess we'll just wrap it up on this, but like, when you talk to, like you said, all these people, like Rich said in a recent podcast, he's like, oh, I still get nervous before I work out. I'm still like nervous all the time. Like you're still nervous. Like Matt has notoriously said that he feels like he's going to throw up sometimes before he works out. Like Katrin has said too, she's like, still get real nervous. It just happens, you know, like you can't
Mm,
fight it, but you got to use it as, like you said earlier, a launching pad where it's like treated like, nah, this is my body getting revved up. This is what I'm made for. You know, like I've trained for this. Like this is my kind of like moment here. And like, I'm going to use this as a fuel and not as something that completely buries me.
totally. And I think like the nerves, you know, they're going to come. I mean, that's why the volume's been cool, because a lot of times now I look at workouts and I'm like, oh, it's only 50. I just did like 300 in a workout, you know, which isn't
Yeah.
necessarily the right thing, but mentally I'm like, okay, I'm capable of that because I've done it before.
Mhm.
But what's interesting is I often find I get more nervous for the things I'm good at, because you have
Oh
like,
yeah.
you set like an expectation of like if it's like a snatch ladder, I'm more nervous for that, even though I'm way better at that than if it was like a long distance run.
Yeah.
But it's more of like you have this expectation of doing well, which causes you to be more nervous, which is kind of
Right.
funny. I've always found that interesting.
No, right. It's definitely right. People, that's like your event, right? Like people find that it's like that. Oh, she's going to crush this. This is her wheelhouse workout. She's going to dominate. Right. And then you like have to live up to that pressure, because if you kind of blow it a little bit, people are like, oh my God, I can't believe she tanked on that.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, what were you doing out there in the stands? Just kidding.
Easy to throw stones from the peanut gallery.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's funny because there's so many trolls now these days, which is just totally off topic, but people just feel like it's so fine to just say mean comments, and I'm like, that's like the last thing I would think to do, is to like bring somebody down that's trying to just do their best.
Oh my God. Right. Yeah. It's like, this is just, it's so fear and insecurity driven by the trolls, but it's also like everyone's a hero behind a keyboard.
Everyone's a hero, right? Man, that makes me actually feel like the thought of it is kind of make me like less of a hero, because it's like in print. It's like there permanently. Like you said something mean.
Yeah. Like everybody saw you being a total like jerk.
Yeah, sorry to just go off topic on a troll
No,
rant.
trust me, it's probably very related to where this conversation is going to go eventually. But yeah, Gary Vee is someone who famously says he feels so bad for people who like comment like that. Because like, imagine how crappy your life must be if you're like out of your whole day, like you have 10 minutes to think up a horrible comment and put it on someone's Instagram. Like think about how unfortunately
Yeah.
bad your situation must be.
And it's like super heartbreaking. Like at least from, I know we're gonna eventually go into body image, but like I've had people comment about like other people comment about my body on like Rich's Instagram, and I'm like, what causes you to do that? And it hurts me. Like obviously I'm like, hey, take a step back, and like it's just a troll saying something mean. But like, what provokes you to say something like that? I just don't understand.
I mean, it's people who need a razz, man. They have, unfortunately, a lack of exciting things going on in their life. Clearly, if they have time to spew some toxic hate in a comment section on somebody else's Instagram of a photo of somebody else on their Instagram.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's just we laugh about it now because like I mean they're great, like Dre and Rich and everyone. Like if people are saying mean things on Mayhem's accounts, they just delete them, which I've
Yeah.
learned to do that too. I used to get fired up and be like, comment back, thanks, like you're hurting my feelings, and now I'm just like, okay, you're gonna say something mean, like bye.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's unfortunate because typically when you try to go back that way, you're only hurting yourself. I think I don't know where I heard this, but it's like holding a grudge for that kind of stuff or being, hateful back is like swallowing poison and expecting the other person to drown.
Totally, it totally is.
So you kind of alluded to it already, but the reason this podcast kind of came up about was because so our little history here is we've kind of known each other for a few years, and you were in the New Hampshire area, so it worked out. But we were working together when you were kind of like transitioning to Mayhem and stuff like that. But I'd always known that you were a gymnast and that you did high level gymnastics. You competed at UNH, and so we had a connection there. And then I mean, we had talked a little bit about how like you said that you had some issues with when you were younger with body image and with nutrition and stuff, and gymnastics in such a perfectionist sport. But recently you put up a post that was saying, about how much you've learned and how much CrossFit has helped you kind of like, I guess, deal with some of those inner things you were dealing with. And you've been working with Mike of M2 Proficient. Sorry, say the right name. I'm going to butcher
M2
it.
Performance.
Okay, good. Got it. M2 Performance. I don't know if it's nutrition or not, but you were saying how helpful Mike's been and how much like CrossFit has helped you, really work through some of the stuff that you feel like came about. And correct me if I'm wrong, that you came about from just like some really crappy stuff that people were saying about you when you were a gymnast and stuff like that. And I think that I have never, we had two nutritionists on the podcast, Josh and Jamie, who you might be familiar with, but I've never seen more inaccurate information and just really crappy practices being happening around gymnastics when it comes to nutrition, like flexibility, strength conditioning, it happens here and there. But like the things that I hear that are being said to some gymnasts, like in passing or in a gym or from parents or from medical providers, let's be honest, it's everybody's fault with young girls, is horrific. And I don't think people realize the devastating impact that not approaching that conversation well has on a young female or male athlete. So I don't know. I wanted to hear your story first from your kind of background, and then I wanted to maybe ask some follow-up questions if you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course. Well, basically, I mean, I think the system is flawed. I'd hope that by now it's changed because I'm 28. So I started gymnastics when I was 5 and then did it through, I think maybe 20 or 21. I don't know when my last year was. Because you don't think about your body when you're like 5, like going to like the younger ages, you're not really thinking about that at all. And I don't remember the first time I actually felt out of place in my body, but I do remember in the sport, like with the other girls, we always just wanted to be small. Like that's like known. Like, a smaller gymnast was probably better. Like I remember Dominique Mochana was like super big when I was growing up, and like she was super tiny, and like everyone just wanted to be like short and tiny. And we would joke about like how they say gymnastics like stunts your growth and like your growth plates because you're pounding your growth plates, and like want that, which is absurd to even think about something like that. And then, I feel like I dealt with disordered eating like super early on, as far as like in my teenage years, we started getting body fat tested and weighed.
Which is,
And
let's just pause right there.
yeah, it's super ridiculous. Mostly because, I mean, at that age, I mean, you shouldn't be anyways thinking about those things. I had 7% body fat. I remember getting tested at 7% body fat. And I don't remember, I think my weight was like around 100 pounds because I didn't want to go over 100 pounds. Like I was like so fearful of going over 100 pounds. And the night before weigh-ins, I would like, try not to eat, try not to drink in the morning, pee, poop, take out all my clips from my hair, like little things that are just like,
Oh my
looking
Lord.
back is like absurd, because they have those calipers. So it's like your leg fat, your stomach, the back of your arm, and we get fat tested. So yeah, that was like, I guess maybe the beginning of those things. And it's
And
just
how
normal.
that happened?
I think because I was level 10, my first year level 10, I think I was 12 or 13. So probably around 12 or 13, which I was pre-puberty. So I had no
For sure.
fat on me. And that's another thing too, which I think is kind of a huge issue, is like, I didn't want to go through puberty either. Like, it's like girls, all your whole mindset in gymnastics is like, stay small. So like, let's delay everything. And like, I know it's natural for that to happen when you have such low body fat growing up, but for that to be like a goal among the girls, is
Yeah.
kind of scary, you know?
Terrifying.
Um, so yeah, we started getting body fat tested, and I remember one time I had gone over 100 pounds for some reason, like because I was growing, because I was a child.
You were normal
And
human.
yeah, and I had to do like beam jumps. Do they do beam jumps still? So like beam jumps, we had like 5 beams in a row, and you had to do like a certain amount of beam jumps a certain amount of time. And in essence, like looking back, I didn't really think of it that way, but I was kind of being punished for my body weight going up. Um, and I went to like a super hardcore gym, and I don't want to drop names or anything
Yeah.
because I do think people grow and people change, and like the sport can cause people like I hope that things have changed now and are changing. I'm sure there still are unhealthy things. But yeah, from a young age, I was already worried about my body fat at 13 and my body weight at 13. So that's too young when I had no body fat on me to be worried about that.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I mean, first, like, thanks for sharing that, because that's baffling to me to hear as someone who obviously is not a female and didn't go through that. But I'm curious, when you started to have, I mean, obviously you were getting weight and stuff, but were your pressures to stay small, like you said, more performance driven? Like, did you want to compete well, or was it more the pressure of people looking at you and coaches saying things and people around you? Like, was it more from the sport, or was it more from like judgment of other people?
I would say performance driven for me, for sure. Like I wanted to go to the Olympics. I think most girls, at that age, looking back now, I didn't have the natural talent to make it to the Olympics. But at that time, I thought, I might have.
Mhm.
And I wanted to go to the Olympics. And I mean, obviously, I think that's the number one. And then you had to be small, which is like the pressure from other people. Like I was obviously feeling pressure if I'm getting weighed and body fat tested and pressure and punished for being higher. I think that's an outside source. And I know as I got older, I do remember instances of my body composition coming into question, per se, of like I would be punished with extra cardio because I was becoming, a woman or growing up and getting more body
Yeah.
fat. So I do think it's both sides. It initially started as just you have to be small to go to the Olympics, so we're going to be small. And that's where my disordered eating started. I was training double days. I trained before school, I think from like 5 to 7, and then I would go to school from whatever 7:30 to 2. I left early and go back to gym from like 2:30 to 7. So I was like doing a full day, and I would eat breakfast after first training session, and then I wouldn't eat till dinner, which
Jesus.
I am actually amazed that I was physically able to continue on that. I mean, I guess as a kid, I don't want to say all the girls were doing it, but we just were all, it's like a community of, hey, we want to be small and this is what we're going to do. And I mean, it led to a lot of like binging. Like I would get home and like be famished and binge.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it starts young with that. And I think the pressure is not only from the sport of wanting to perform well, but also there's pressure from other people to be small, if
Mm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I think that yeah, I mean, it's tough to hear. It's tough to hear that it happens, but at the same time, at that point in your life, you probably didn't know any better that this was not okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so how long, if you don't mind me asking, how long do you think that lasted, like year wise, from when you started when you were 12, 13? Was it like all the way through high school and into college when you competed, or was it kind of like a few years and it leveled off?
So it definitely all the way through high school. I had knee surgery when I was 17, and
Mhm.
that kind of forced a change in my body. So I went through puberty and my body just changed. And coming back from that, I never came back the same. I was just, I was much better at my smaller frame and what I was used to. And then I went to college like soon after that to University of New Hampshire. And then it was kind of like a different level of disordered eating because so now I'm a woman and I'm trying to compete on a team. And I honestly think the college coaches were just as bad, um, as far as they're more upfront with, hey, like if you lost 5 to 10 pounds, your ankle wouldn't be hurting. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense, but
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
okay. Like you'd have more like sit down meetings with them, like, hey, you need to lose weight, and they're more straight up forward with that. So I guess it would be a different level of disordered eating there, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't necessarily, I wasn't like starving myself all day, but I was restricting calories and exercising a bunch to try and get that weight off that I felt like I needed to lose.
Yeah. And during like all this time, like through the beginning, your coaches, whatever, and then up through New Hampshire and stuff, did you get like information about, the safe, healthy way to maybe approach this, talk with nutritionists, with doctors, or was it just like do more cardio and eat less?
Yeah, it was pretty much do more cardio and eat less. And like looking back, it's kind of funny because I never thought about it as being wrong, but I also never was approached with like, hey, let's get this nutrition information to you. Or like, I had no idea what macros were. Like, I knew like, hey, carbs are bad, I'm not gonna eat carbs, even though looking back now, carbs probably would help me be much better at
Absolutely.
gymnastics because I
Absolutely.
wouldn't have been so exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was just all the wrong information. It was more like I was getting information, but from the wrong sources, the wrong information.
Mm-hmm.
They just wanted you to be smaller, pretty much, because they feel like you perform better smaller. Which I honestly don't think that's even true either. On
Yeah.
top of it, so because we see girls who are at healthy forms competing in the Olympics now,
Mm.
and like, why is it this common misconception that you have to be like zero body fat?
Yeah. And I mean, this is really like a tough way to navigate it, but like it's so heartbreaking to see times when the information given to gymnasts is contraindicated for exactly what the sport demands are, right? Like not eating carbs. This is an anaerobic sport based on repeated burst turns, like which is the substrate of glycogen, which is carbs. So like, yes, you need a lot of other things to be successful, and protein and healthy fats and micronutrients and stuff like that. But like that is such a baffling myth that's still propagated in the culture, is that like no carbs when like your entire sport is fueled off carbs. And then we get, people give gymnasts crap because they're not powerful enough. They're not surviving energy wise in a 4-hour practice. They're doing 2-a-day sessions. And like, not only are you telling them the wrong information that's not going to help them get through the practice, you're chastising them for not performing when they don't have what they need. Like, it's so crazy to think about how hypocritical that is.
Yeah, it's definitely a flawed system. And when you're in it and you're young, like I was ignorant and I didn't really know, but looking back, like from being in CrossFit and knowing like what good nutrition is and how like to fuel your body rather than starve your body. Yeah, I think I could have been much better, honestly.
Mm.
Like, I would have performed a lot better. And I would hope now like things are changing so that girls can be healthy. One, because I look back too and I had so many nagging injuries, like so many things that would have gone away with extra fuel. You know what I mean? Like, I might not have had all these injuries appear if I was eating right. So
Yeah, and that's definitely something I can speak to, right? Is like the ability to rebuild new tissue. And so think about like a young athlete, right? They're growing and they're already burning through calories and burning through like macros and stuff just to build new tissue, right? To grow like a normal human should. And then you put on top of that not only the caloric expenditure of 2-a-day practices or a long 4-hour practice, and then you put on top of that like the start of overuse injuries and stuff like that. Like, between the just the net equation of not enough fuel in to repair and remodel things, and then you put on top of that the amount of training hours that somebody might do, there's no physical time to recover enough and heal yourself, but also there's not enough gas in the gas tank to get yourself ready for the next day. And though and this is a very nerdy tangent, but there's very real, going back to our original conversation about stress overload, like there's a very real set of research that says that when you're chronically in a stress state and you don't have the ability to recover, well, your body is more survival based and it turns off some of these like rebuild and recover methods. So you're not putting down new growth tissue, you're not putting down new tendons and ligaments and cartilage, which is what you need to heal. And so if you're chronically stressed, either with the mental, emotional side of somebody saying you need to lose weight, or your training hours are so high, or you have no time to get your homework done and you can't sleep, well, like that's a lot of why I think a lot of these overuse injuries are so stagnant and then not making any change in gymnastics. We still have a 70 to 80% overuse rate and so many kids get hurt, but like this toxic mixture of food and recovery and training hours and, the culture of more, always, like that's exactly why I think we have so many things that nobody wants to talk about.
yeah, it's definitely a huge issue in gymnastics for sure. And even to hear, like, I've been removed from the sport for 6 years now, and it breaks my heart, but I don't miss it. Like, I really am, like, looking back, I'm so glad I did it because it did make me who I am, but I also don't feel like I would put my child in it.
Mm.
And that's sad. That really is, that my experience has brought me to that. And I would hope that things would change, because even looking back, like in high school, at lunchtime, I did homework because I had no choice. Like, I sat by myself and did homework, because if I didn't do my homework, I wasn't going to get it done, and like, I was a straight A student because I wanted to go to school and, further my life past this, and it's kind of, I sacrificed a lot of things that, yeah, they might not really matter, but like, as young women growing up, you also need to be able to, separate those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's like, the ability to have a place where you can go and not think about gymnastics and training is super important. And a lot of friends of mine who did compete on national team at the Olympic level said that like one of their saving graces was a time when they were not thinking about gymnastics and they had just friends and movies and hanging out and just letting it unwind a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And there's so much pressure on the sport. And like, if you want to go, for me, I'm super competitive and just naturally innate in me. And I wanted to go to the Olympics. And so nothing was going to come between me and that. And I mean, things did, but in my mind, nothing was going to. So like, you're going to push the limits, and you're with other girls who are equally as talented, like, that want the same things. So you're going to push each other.
Mhm.
And that can be negative for sure.
Yeah. And now that we're talking so much about, all the things that need to change, I definitely empathize with coaches and parents and people, because it is, I mean, think about what we're at here with social media and these things these days. It is hard for a young athlete to be in a good headspace and find a way to fuel themselves and be fit for, training and stuff like that. And I definitely, as a male coach, empathize with some other people out there that you have to it's really about self-awareness. It's about education, self-awareness, and communication. This is what a lot of this comes down to. Is there's clearly going to have conversations in the gym where it comes up, and it's going to be, someone's tired, or someone's, maybe somebody does just go through a rough patch and they grow and they mature and they naturally grow more body weight as they should. And there's definitely times when you want to make sure that you have to be safe and healthy to do gymnastics, which means taking care of yourself. And it's not about weight. It's about fuel, like we said, to perform well. And I think that coaches and medical providers and parents who are here, you need to, one, if you've never had formal training in nutrition, or you're not a physician or a registered dietitian, you have no business saying anything about what someone eats, how much they eat, of what type, and all that stuff. So that's the first thing, is if you're someone who's doing that, you need to have a very harsh conversation with yourself. Now, that's not most people. Most people just want kids to be happy and healthy and enjoy the sport. And if that's the situation, when those moments come up in the gym, you have to be very self-aware about the words you use and how you present it. And then make sure you have a nutritionist, a doctor on speed dial that you can call and ask about information, and have it just be part of your culture about like recovery. Like, hey, when we train hard because we love hard training, we have big goals. But between those sessions, you need to sleep enough, you need to drink enough water, you need time management really, really well, and you got to put good fuel in your body so you can survive the next practice and be ready to do the work, right? If you want to do the work, you need fuel. And I think framing it like that in those two aspects of knowing what you don't know, and also not making it a weird thing that you only talk about weight and like food and stuff, like that's super important for that to be part of your culture.
Yeah, I think that would have made a difference, having a nutritionist or a doctor that was part of the whole thing, someone that you could lean on and ask those questions, because I would never have asked my coach, like, what should I be eating? You know what I mean? Like, the thought of that at that age, like, I wouldn't have done that. And it's just so perpetuated among the girls that, like, it's like a community, at least for me growing up, of like, we're all doing it together, like,
Mm.
it's, I don't know, I guess it's like a negative bonding of, we would talk about things like that, that weren't okay. And I guess nobody had the right answers, and nobody had resources to find out what was right.
Yeah, and I think that it's definitely another like productive point for making some positive changes. If you're a coach or someone who is involved with young female athletes, or male, let's be real, because all guys have issues just like this too, because there's a similar kind of aesthetic, like ripped six pack and stuff like that people are onto and looking for. But if you're someone who's working in the space of gymnastics, you need to have a very good superficial level of understanding of the basics of nutrition so that you can field some of these questions. Not that you have to give them explanations, but that so you can have a positive conversation about fueling versus weight and, performance and energy in the gym versus like, restricting calories and stuff like that. And I think that you need to be responsible to study this stuff and work with a nutritionist and work with someone who's going to teach you the basics of what the latest science says, because this stuff changes so fast. It changes every month. That's why it's a full-time profession. And like, it's crazy that some of these things that were around in the 90s about like, only eating a certain amount of food and restricting carbs and like, so no carbs, no fats, because fats make you fat, and no carbs because it'll make you fat too. Only protein all the time and veggies. And it's like, dude, that's insane. And like looking back 20 years ago, like that was common practice. But like, if you're still saying things like that, you would either not say it or you need to get educated pretty quick.
Yeah, I think education would be a huge bonus of just having people in the gym that are more educated on nutrition and recovery, because I think about just awareness of how many times I was working out on a sprained ankle, and like looking back now, like I've got ankle problems that I'm going to have for my entire life because I had like a terrible sprained ankle and just kept going, and it was okay with the coaches. They tape my ankle up, you know what I mean? It's swollen and they're taping my ankle so I can go tumble and do double backs, So just things like that it all breeds from the center of like health. We need to be healthy to do these sports. And the girls should be healthy because it's not just right now in the sport, but for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, so I'm just curious about the end of your story. When did things start to, like, when did you gain awareness that like that was not okay and it was unhealthy? And like, what did you do or who did you talk to try to like learn more about yourself and kind of take care of yourself better?
So in CrossFit, when I was training, it was before the 2016 games, I had reached out to Mike to help me, Mike Malloy.
Like Malloy.
Yeah, he's so awesome. And I'd had these nagging injuries. Like I was training, which not even the volume I was training out, but I had just these nagging injuries and they wouldn't go away. And I was like, I need to get some nutrition help because my entire life I've known that I have issues with food and eating and body image and things like that. And he had me just log. I remember he had me log for like a week. So I'm training basically CrossFit Games level and eating less than 1,800 calories a day. So when I started working with him, I was eating like 1,800 calories. And of course, he wanted me at like 2,800 calories. And Mike, being as awesome as he was, he knew for me, like I wasn't just going to start eating 1,000 more calories a day because mentally I was not okay with that. So over the course of many months, we like increased my calories by like maybe like 100, 200 calories for a certain amount of weeks. And we just increased. And I started seeing these like nagging injuries go away. And I was on top of that, I was performing better. I had less injuries. I was getting stronger and I wasn't gaining any weight. So just all these things, and I'm eating more, and I eventually got to almost 1,000 calories more than that because I'm like around 2,800 now. And it's been working, it's not an overnight fix. I've been working with Mike since 2015, and I still have times where I'm like, I need to go on a cut. And now it's almost like a joke because it's been so long. And he's like, Tasia, how many times have we done this? Like, we're not going on a cut. Like, you're just not. And I'm going to track you down. And like, talk about a good nutritionist. Like, not only is he checking my log, but he's my friend and he's going to tell it to me straight and be like, you're being stupid. Like, I'm just telling you that, that this doesn't work. Like, you need to eat more. Cause it's always like, it's so funny. I have a nutritionist he's always telling me eat more. You know what I mean? Like, he's never like, you ate too much. It's always the opposite because I've been trained for years that I need to eat less. I need to eat less if I want to be leaner. I need to eat less if I want, my chest bar to be better. And it's just a twisted script in my head. That's not the truth. So yeah, Mike has been like a huge saving grace, and I was actually his first client. So I'm pretty proud of that because he has now got a huge nutrition company.
Yeah, man.
But I know me and other people, he's really helped a lot that less isn't more, you know what I mean? Like, you need to be fueling your body properly and to try to take off, like, it's for performance. Like, we're fueling our body to perform, and that's what's important, and to stay healthy, right? Like, it is healthy to have, healthy adrenals and all these other things that are really important.
Yeah. And I mean, definitely we have to give Mike a shout out, because it's incredible that not only was Mike willing to help, but he also respected the slow nature of how it's going to be, and to respect building trust first before you really start addressing sensitive topics and stuff like that. So that's another big takeaway for people here, is that if you notice there's someone who is struggling with this and needs help, and definitely as the culture in gymnastics gets a really brutal eye-opening awareness of how bad some of these things are, you have to be very sensitive to these. These are deep-rooted issues for people, and they're oftentimes really part of someone's core identity that's an issue. So you have to go slow, and you have to work very patiently with these people to make sure it's something that lasts for the life, and it's not just a flash in the pan. They're on and they're off like yo-yo.
Yeah, and that's I think finding a nutritionist that actually cares about you as a person is super important. And there's so many people who claim to be nutritionists who can do your macros, and that's great, but you also need someone who takes into account it's not just about numbers. It's not my body weight on the scale that he finds his numbers, right? Like my sleep, my stress, my exercise output. There are so many factors that go into our health and nutrition that are really important, that you need to change up and make sure you're doing it right, and we've tried adjusting my macros when I'm like, hey, I feel like I'm eating too much. And he's like, okay, let's adjust a little bit and see how it goes. And most of the time it's like, okay, I need to go back to eating more, but he's understanding in a sense, he's never going to put you in an unhealthy situation where you're at a deficit, but he's also okay, you're not feeling good at this number. Let's try something a little different. Let's raise the fat a little, or let's raise the protein, let's do something like this and just see if it works better. And I think that's what's even more amazing about him. It's not just you're not just numbers, right? You're a whole person.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's something that someone should always think about, is coaching the entire person who happens to do gymnastics, happens to do CrossFit, happens to play baseball, whatever it is. It's not about the sport. It's about helping someone become a good human who's healthy, and then you can work on that from there. But I'm curious about, you said that when you first started changing things, it was really hard for you mentally to tell yourself a different narrative. And this goes back to our earlier conversation about, negative thoughts sneaking in your head, and, the things that voice inside your head says to you when you're making decisions about what you eat and when you eat. What were some of the things that you found were going through your head, and then how did you maybe help with that? Because I feel like a lot of people listening here probably know someone, their daughter, their son, or have a friend who is in that spot and probably needs, one, you need to find someone to help digest this, whether it's a nutritionist or a mental health provider, but also you need someone to, give you just some words of advice. What was going through your head then?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long journey, and I'm still on that journey as far as food, and making sure food isn't the enemy, right? Food is actually really good for us, and it's here for a reason. Our bodies need it. And I think having someone like Mike, as well as good people, surrounding yourself with good people, knowledgeable people that care about you as a person, has been super helpful, because the fact that I felt comfortable enough with Mike to be hey, this person said this about me on Instagram, and I'm really upset about it, or I don't want to eat this much because I'm scared I'm going to get fat or whatever. And to have someone to confide those negative thoughts in, and to say it aloud, because when you're just saying it over and over inside your head, at least for me, you start to believe it. You're that guy said that about me. Well, he's right. That's true. That's what I do. I'm I can't believe he said that, because I think that about me. And for someone to perpetuate that, and it's this sick cycle, it's this really bad cycle. So to say hey, this person said this about me, help me through this, and to get some truth from someone that loves you and cares about you has been huge for me, to not hide away in a corner and just think these bad thoughts, but be hey, that really hurt me that this person said it. What do you think? And, Mike, my mom, my friends, have been super great when any of these situations have come up. And it's going to be something you're always working through as your body's my body has changed and evolved even since gymnastics. And yeah, you're going to be working through those things, and to have people to confide in and tell you the truth about yourself.
Yeah, very important to build a group of people around you. It's twofold, right? One is about adding people to your life who care about you, want what's best for you, and like you said, will give you that balance of, help when you need it, but also some tough love when you need it as well, and making sure that you're you're okay with hearing some of that feedback, but at the same time, it's gently delivered. But then on the other side, it's about removing people in your life that are toxic, right? Like there's a lot of times, and unfortunately, the people that you wish would not say some of those things are not going to change, and so you have to just spend less time with them. You have to separate yourself from them. You have to do things based on what your values are and what you want out of your body and out of your goals for performance, and not based on what Johnny Pants 44 says about you on Instagram, or what some girl at your school says about you, or what somebody else in the gym says about you. Like you have to really do your best to surround yourself with people that care about you, but also remove people that are toxic to you.
Yeah, and I think social media like just brings a whole new level to it. I'm so blessed that I didn't have social media until college. So there wasn't an Instagram when I was in high school, and I can't imagine what those girls have to go through with that. But it's okay to remove people. It's okay to block people. It's okay, you want people around you that are speaking life into you and saying the truth about who you are. And that's not a number on a scale, So definitely surrounding yourself with those things and removing, like you said, the things that aren't bringing you good. You got to get rid of those.
Yeah, Jamie brought that up when we talked at Power Monkey. We had a podcast earlier, and she was saying that's one of the main things that she does, and she works in Manhattan, right? Talk about like a very highly industrialized and advertised area with social media. She says one of the number one things she has to do with young athletes is be like, okay, who do you follow? Why do you follow them? Do they make you feel good about yourself, or are you like negatively comparing yourself to what this garbage photo edited certain angle filter looks like when she has abs? Like, is that what you're comparing yourself to? Are you following people that are inspiring to you and that lift you up and motivate you, or people that make you feel like crap? And if that's the case, social media has a delete button, has a block button, has an unfriend button, like for a reason. Like you need to make that choice to make sure you're getting a constant flow of positive information inside.
Yeah, and it's so great you say that, because comparison is the thief of joy. It's like such a true statement, and it's what we do all the time, and what social media kind of forces you to do is to compare yourself to other people. And even in training and competing, it's something that I deal with all the time. And whenever I get in that spot where I'm like comparing myself to someone else, I try to take a second, like if I'm in the middle of the workout and I'm like, man, I suck. You know what I mean? Like I can't keep up. And then I take a second, I go, wait, are you doing the best you can do? Like, is this physically at your best capability? And if the answer is no, then okay, let's go harder. And if the answer is yes, then what else can you do? And I think, yeah, competing's super important and you want to win and do that, but you can only do what you can physically do. You can put yourself in the best position, sleep, performance, like fueling your body. And then from there, it's the best you can do. So I think removing those comparisons is super hard, and it's going to be natural to come up like forever. We're going to be comparing ourselves to other people. But you also have to take a second and work on yourself and ask yourself those questions, because you're not that other person. We're made differently. Everyone's different. Everyone's unique. And that's special.
Yeah. And I think that is also a reality of the modern era, is that it's no longer, like you said, when we grew up, we're about the same age. When we grew up in high school, we didn't have that, but in college it started to surfaces. And then, now it's a fully ingrained part of our culture, man. Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you can, one click away, you can make yourself feel real miserable. And I think that's another really important role we have as, adults who are either coaches or educators or parents or whatever it is. I'm not a parent. Obviously, I don't think you are either. So, but being able to teach young athletes about how to be disciplined with social media is very important, right? One of that piece is who you follow, but two is about making sure that you see social media for exactly what it is, which is a highlight reel. And you understand that people are going to only put up those things that they really think are, edited best versions of themselves. And a lot of the younger athletes that we have on our team, when we talk about this, we talk about how you have to make sure that you have a good perspective on what's going on there. It's a fake reality of what's happening. Nobody puts up the bad moments, the sad things, the negative stuff. And people who often post those things that are, not in the right intention of, selfies of what they look like, or talking about their workouts and that stuff is a lot of times it's based off of fears and insecurities at its primal level. People are insecure about certain things, just like you and I are talking about. They have fears about judgment. They have fears of the unknown. And that's people manifesting as like, I'm feeling a little down right now. I need some external validation. And when you see it in that lens, I think it really changes about why people put certain things up online.
Yeah, I think those are such great points. And it is something that you have to recognize every day. Like remind yourself, every day, okay, yeah, she's beautiful and perfect, but it's through a lens. You know, we don't know what's going on in her life outside of that, or his life or whatever. And yeah, just be as, that's like what my goal is, always just be as transparent as possible. You know what I mean? People really can resonate with some of the things you've been through, and like that's how you connect with people and help people be better. And that's what social media can be as well. It can be a great platform for helping and
Or
inspiring people. So let's use it that way for what it is.
right. You have to, it's just a tool that has the ability to be good or bad based on how you use it, like many other things. And I don't know why this popped in my mind, but I was reading David Goggins' book, and he's gone through so much crazy stuff. But in one point of it, he says like everybody has fears and insecurities, and everybody faces the same problems. Some people just hide it better. Like the ones that are, look like they have it all figured out and they're perfect. No, they don't. Nobody does. Anytime you have something go well in your brain, your mind, our brain has a negativity bias from, again, evolution, that jumps to the next negative thing, or the next thing that's going to go terribly wrong. Right. And so that's something I really found useful from his book, is that like, once you realize that everybody is going through this and everybody has the same root issues for why we struggle with these things, it makes you feel a little bit better about your own issues, which is why I think I like reading books so much and talking to people, is because you hear common threads and stories like, oh, you struggled with that too. Like, that's crazy. And I bet that you, even just taking the amazing time to do this, is thousands of people are going to be like, oh my God, that's me. I had the same problems. I can't, and look at her now. She's doing so well.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is super important to just recognize that, you know, everyone's going through something, and it's okay to put it out there. Like, it doesn't have to be a woe is me, but like, hey, this is what I went through. This is how I'm getting better. You know, I'm working through it, and like, hopefully it can help you too.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I think a practical takeaway for like solutions on this side is that, as it's, everybody is quick to blame other people for why it's happening. And I think that nobody, again, just like everybody has problems, everybody has fault in this game, especially in the gymnastics world. I know as a younger coach, when I was uneducated, I didn't mean in malintention. I just like didn't know enough about nutrition. The advice I gave was terrible. So like, I'm accountable just as much as anybody else. I have to, everybody listening to the podcast should take it upon themselves to educate themselves and say the right things, and not blame other people for like, this coach is the one who's doing it, or this person's nasty, right? If it's not a good fit, leave the gym. If you're tired of people in your gym treating people like crap, move, get a new gym, right? It's as simple as that. It's brutal sometimes, but it's toxic. It's not worth it. Like, and again, you can't control somebody who doesn't have good information and says terrible things, but you can control where you go. You can control who else you hang out with and that stuff. And you have to take care of yourself first. And not only, like we said, having these conversations with your someone who you trust, but also about like putting yourself in the best position. And sometimes that means a really hard decision about like, hey, you treat me like crap and say things that are really, really mean. I'm not going to work out here anymore.
Yeah, totally. I think that's super important. And I mean, growing up, you know, I definitely wasn't going to my mom like, hey, they said this to me or that, you know, and that's part of the issue too, is like, how do we get it like inside the gym so that's a safe space? Because a lot of kids are just going to hold that in, you know, and that's not my mom's fault. You know, I wasn't going to tell her like, hey, these things are happening. So like breaking that barrier of it's like we're comfortable talking about what's happening in the gym. Like that needs to be like
Yep.
something for these girls growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like that thought process of just radical candor and open communication, whether that has to happen in a private setting with, just a few coaches and a parent, is fine. But I think, again, speaking from someone who does work with a lot of young female athletes, especially in the clinic and in the gym, is when you start to have better education, you approach it with the recovery mindset, fuel for performance, and you build a culture around health and things like that, it starts to sift into everybody. And so then honestly, like I'm not dumb. I know these side conversations come up between the girls and they don't bring it to me. I'm a guy and they're a coach. They're not going to talk to me. But when you have that built into your culture, it seems to make a better dent when they talk about it with each other. Like their friends are quick to be like, hey man, like that's stupid. Don't think about it like that. Like you're not fat, or like, you don't need to lose weight. Like just like you're being ridiculous right now. And like they'll help each other out. But also we're very, very conscious about it. We have female staff members who go above and beyond to stay educated on the latest stuff for mental health and for education. Like clearly you need to learn gymnastics technique and be good there, but like all this other stuff is just, you can't afford not to learn about it because you spend so much time with them. So anytime there's a more serious conversation, they have a one-on-one time with another female coach. We have nutritionists around us that we refer to all the time, and mental health providers who we refer to all the time. And we try to highlight those people who are accessible if they need help. And like just having that in your community of trusting, like, I don't know, but I love you and I want to help you. Here's somebody that can help you with this issue.
Yeah, that's so awesome to hear that, things are shifting. I think it's funny, I look back because it was in the 90s, the 90s and 2000s when I was doing gymnastics, and I know a lot of things are still the same, but I do feel like there's a lot of good coming to the sport and that things can change. There is more knowledge and more things we know more now that can help make the sport better for these girls and guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's unfortunately the gymnastics has been, the lid has been ripped open on some very dark corners of gymnastics, but it's allowing us to have the conversations that haven't had, light in the last few years, but also hold people accountable who need to be held accountable, and really get a realistic view about, like, this is a problem. This is a massive problem. This, nutrition, some other things with injuries, training, and all that. Like, we have to do better, guys. Like, everybody has to do better here. And it allows us to have a space to talk about it. And that's the first step, right? Is like having people like yourself who are willing to talk about their experiences, or have people who are willing to help, like Mike and Jamie and some other people who, and my friend Josh, they want to help and get the information. And the tough part is the psychology of changing people and helping them feel comfortable enough to talk about it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome to have people like you that are like changing the sport, like it starts in one gym, starts in, and just spreads. So hopefully it'll continue that way.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm conscious of your time and I don't want to take too much, but first of all, I appreciate you sharing so much, because this is really cool to hear from your point of view after we've had a couple, nutritionists and people on. But are there parting words of advice that you have to young gymnasts who are listening, or parents or coaches who do not have bad intentions? They just want what's best for their kids, and they really want to help, prevent some of these things, such as like body image or nutrition problems or things like that. What would be your best pieces of advice?
Yeah, I guess kind of like what we touched on, surround yourself with people who are going to speak life into you and speak the truth into you is super important. And like on the same coin, remove the people that aren't. If someone's telling you you're fat, or if someone's using exercise as punishment, that's definitely wrong and needs to be removed. So that would be step one. And then I think also, like we talked about, education, if you're not really sure if it's right nutritionally, like don't say it. Find out from a resource that it's right. Because I think about so many things that I've even said in the past about nutrition that were so wrong, but because I had heard it somewhere, I just thought it was right. So definitely educate yourself and surround yourself with good people, and that's where it starts.
Yeah, same. I mean, I've made many, many mistakes, and in this front and many others. And it's the humility to say, I don't know, and I'm going to find someone who can help you with that. But we'll figure it out together.
Totally, that's so important.
Cool, Tasia. Well, anything else you want to share about your life, or things where can people find you if they want to reach out and say hello or watch you dominate the games this year?
Yes, well, I'm a month out from the CrossFit Games with CrossFit Mayhem Freedom.
For the next month.
I'm a little busy exercising a lot, but eating lots of carbs. Thanks, Mike. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram pretty much. Tasia Percevecz is my Instagram. And I try to get to anyone, reaching out with questions that are, important. So if you have a question regarding this podcast, I'd be happy if you message me to answer that.
Yeah, we can definitely get you connected with Mike or Jamie or Josh or whoever else is available. There's a lot of great people that we're lucky to have in our lives who have taught us all this stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, Tasia. Well, I started off with saying you're an amazing human, and that confirms it if it wasn't already true already. So I'm lucky to have you in my life, and I'm grateful for everything you're sharing with us.
Wow, thank you so much, Dave. It's been so great.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
Yeah, it's okay. It's you.
All right. We will talk to you soon. Have a good night.
Sounds good. Bye.